What if I told you that one of the biggest changes in modern history didn't happen through a war, or an election, or even a revolution? It happened quietly, slowly, and piece by piece, and most people barely noticed it was happening. 20 years ago, if you told Americans that their phones would track their locations, their searches would be stored in some database, and their online behavior would be analyzed, and that massive amounts of their personal data would be collected every single day, most people would have called that dystopian. But now it's normal. People willingly carrying tracking devices in their pockets. We accept terms and conditions without reading them. Apps know where we go. Algorithms learn what keep us emotional. And companies build profiles around our behavior, and governments have surveillance powers that most people don't fully understand. And the scary part isn't that surveillance exists, it's how quietly society accepted it. So today, we're talking about how we got here. From the aftermath of 9/11 attacks, to the rise of FISA surveillance, to data analytics, and to the system quietly tracking human behavior every single day. This is PSIND, and this episode is The Privacy That Died Quietly. So after 9/11, America changed overnight. Fear changes countries. And after those attacks, Americans wanted security more than anything else. People were terrified another attack could happen at any moment. And that fear led to a massive expansion of surveillance powers in the name of national security. One of the biggest examples was the Patriot Act. The argument sounded reasonable at the time. If surveillance can stop terrorism, why wouldn't we use it? And honestly, a lot of Americans agreed. Because when people are scared, privacy becomes easier to surrender. That period after 9/11 created a mindset that still exists today. If you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear. But that phrase ignores something so important. Privacy was never only about hiding wrongdoing. Privacy is about freedom. Freedom to think privately, speak privately, search privately, and live privately. And once governments gain powers during moments of fear, history shows those powers rarely shrink later. And that's where organizations like the National Security Agency became central to the conversation. And eventually, more Americans started hearing another word, FISA. Most people have heard the term before, but very few people actually know what it means. FISA stands for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It was originally created in the 70s after intelligence scandals involved government spying. The idea behind it was simple: create a legal framework for monitoring foreign threats while supposedly maintaining oversight. That oversight came through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, often called the FISA Court. But here's where things started getting complicated, especially post 9/11. One of the most controversial parts of modern surveillance became something called Section 702. Supporters argue Section 702 helps intelligence agencies monitor foreign targets tied to terrorism, cyber threats, and national security risks. Critics argue it opens the door to massive amounts of incidental data collection involving America. And that's the key word, incidental. Because in a global digital world, Americans constantly communicate with people overseas, emails, phone calls, messages, even social media interactions. So even if surveillance is technically aimed at foreign targets, American communications can and will end up collected in the process. And this is where a lot of people start asking difficult questions. How much data is too much? Who decides what gets collected? Who watches the watchers? And how much oversight actually exists behind closed doors? One of the biggest concerns critics raise is something called backdoor searches. The concern is that databases containing collected communications can later be searched for information involving Americans. Supporters of surveillance programs say these tools help prevent attacks and saves lives. But critics of it say secrecy and weak oversight create dangerous potential for abuse. So whether you agree or disagree with this program, the bigger point is this. Most Americans don't fully understand how much surveillance infrastructure exists around them because it's complicated. It's hidden behind legal language, intelligence terminology, classified programs, and technology most people never think about. But while the government surveillance expanded, something else was growing at the same time. Corporate surveillance. And honestly, that might be the part people volunteered for the most. So just sit back for a second and think about how much information your phone knows about you. It knows where you go. It knows what time you wake up, what videos you watch, what posts make you angry, and what advertisements make you stop scrolling, what stores you visit, what you search at 2 a.m. when nobody else is awake. Modern technology doesn't just collect information, it studies behavior. And that's where data analytics come in. Massive systems now analyze patterns, habits, interest, emotional reactions, routines, and consumer behavior on a scale humans could barely imagine 20 years ago. And most people never think about it because it feels so normal. You download an app, you hit accept, and the tracking starts. Location tracking, search history, cookies, behavioral profiling, ad targeting, data brokers buying and selling your information. And companies realize something incredibly valuable. Human attention is profitable. Your clicks are profitable. Your emotions are profitable. And your behavior is profitable. There's an old phrase in tech circles. If the product is free, you are the product. And honestly, that statement becomes harder to deny every year because modern systems don't necessarily need a human being physically watching your life. The system analyzes patterns automatically. Predictive analytics can estimate behavior before you even realize your own thoughts. Just think about that for a second. You don't need someone manually reading every message if systems can already predict routines, interests, fears, and reactions through patterns alone. And maybe that's the creepiest part. But a lot of tracking became so common, people stopped questioning it entirely. Phones listening for voice activation, apps requesting microphone access, and have no reason to have a microphone access. Location sharing becoming normalized, smart devices inside homes, and constant notifications designed to pull people back into apps over and over again. Convenience slowly replaced caution. And while companies were learning how to predict behavior, algorithms were learning how to hold attention. Algorithms are one of the most powerful and visible forces in modern life. Not because they control every thought people have, but because they influence what people constantly see. And what people repeatedly see shapes perception. Most social media platforms are built around engagement, attention, and watch time, interaction, emotion, and outrage performs extremely well online. Fear performs well, anger performs well, and division performs well. Because emotional reactions keep people scrolling. The goal isn't necessarily to control what you think. The goal is to control what keeps your attention. And once systems learn what emotionally activates people, they can continue feeding their similar content endlessly. Over time, people stop realizing how heavily their information environment is being shaped. Not always by governments, not always by conspiracies, but by systems optimized for engagement and profit. And that creates a strange world where surveillance, analytics, algorithms, advertising, psychology, and politics all start overlapping. Data became power. Attention became currency, and privacy slowly became optional. The strange thing about all of this is that privacy didn't disappear in one dramatic moment. There wasn't one law, one speech, one decision. It happened gradually. Fear post 9/11, technology becoming addictive, convenience replacing caution, and people trading personal information for entertainment, speed, and connection. And now we live in a world where surveillance is so normalized, most people barely think about it anymore. Our phones track us, our apps profile us, companies study us. Governments collect massive amounts of digital information, and algorithms constantly compete for our attention every second of the day. The question isn't whether surveillance exists. It clearly does. The real question is, how much privacy have we traded away without realizing it? And maybe the biggest change wasn't the surveillance itself. Maybe it's how quickly society accepted it. Alright, that's all I got for this one, guys. Appreciate you. Go follow the Facebook page, PSIND. Yeah, that's all I got. Catch you in the next one. Peace.